Hey everyone, welcome. I'm Eleanor, and today we're going to do a closer look of a beautiful, simple space. But before we get into that, I have a little light housekeeping to do with you. Tomorrow, if you're seeing this on Wednesday, September 18th, then tomorrow, September 19th, I'm offering a free workshop called Launch Your Right Sizing Journey. So we're getting on to the last chance of being able to register for this free workshop. Well, basically, this workshop tacks on to the Right Sizing with Design program that I launched earlier this summer. This is a preliminary introductory workshop to help you find your deeper why. This is the work we can do that will actually get us to start. And then also in this workshop, we're going to also do a mini space planning exercise so that you can get a taste for how that particular tool works, which is a big part of what I do, teaching people the skills of interior design, some of them extremely practical, like space planning. And it's part of right sizing with design as well. So I want to give people a little hands-on experience. So that is coming right up. So register at my website. I'm also going to put a link below in the Substack. And if you register, you will automatically get the Zoom link. If you can't attend, but you're interested, register anyway. I'm going to send the recording of the Zoom out to everyone who's on that registration email list. So that's my light housekeeping. And then today, for a closer look, we're going to look at a very simple space, and it's set in Japan. I'm going to explain that I am going to Japan in November, and I have started to really get down to brass tacks around planning. So excuse me while I get obsessed with Japan. So this is a space, a room. This is in what's called a ryokan, or my Japanese pronunciation isn't very good, but ryokan is a kind of an inn, a traditional inn in Japan. And they're generally smaller, more intimate than the hotel. That sort of like, if you think about a historic inn or a traditional inn in the United States, or what you imagine that would look like if you've never been to one, there are fewer rooms. The rooms are basically, converted home of someone. And the owner is the family who lives there. And so this is what that is. This particular home was built, I think they said something like 400 years ago. Oh, no, sorry. That would be almost impossible, but 140 years ago. And it's a former samurai residence. So that's cool. And the place is called Nazuna Obi Onsen Resort. And so let's talk about what an onsen is as we walk through this incredible space. One thing I've always loved about Japanese aesthetic and design, of course, is the minimalism. I mean, like, I don't know why we haven't talked about this more, but, if you need a model for beautiful representation or experience and expression of minimalism, look to Japan. So I know a few of the features that we're looking at, some of these traditional architectural features that you would see in a lot of Japanese temples and old great houses. And so one of them is the tatami on the floor here. And tatami is a straw weave mat, and they're always the same size. And so often this is a kind of modular design. So often the room size is determined by how many tatami you're going to put in there. And so they would say this is a 9 tatami room as a unit of measure. And the mat are pretty hot. They're solid. They don't give. It's not like walking on a pillow or a bed. They're very solid, but they have a little more give than the wood floor. So they're nice underfoot. You don't want to walk on the tatami with your shoes on because you'll rip the straw. So you always take your shoes off when you're walking on tatami. And then typically, everything happens on the floor. Everything happens down on the tatami. This is also part of why you don't wear your shoes indoors. So the bed is on the floor, and this is a bedroom really used for sleeping, but other areas of the home you would also just be on the floor for eating or for working at your desk. And this is traditional. A lot of Japan, of course, is now part of the modern world, and they have desks and chairs just like the Western world does. But you can still see examples of traditional um, Japanese design, very much in use. And also, of course, the mixture, which I'm really looking forward to experiencing firsthand. Another fun thing here, which I've actually talked about before in Refuge and in my podcast. I'm sorry, I don't have a podcast, so it wouldn't be in my podcast. In my blog, probably before I started the Substack, so I can try to resuscitate that, but this is called the Tokonoma. It's this area. You can see that it's got a light overhead, and there's a hanging scroll, and then a flower arrangement, and then otherwise it's very empty. This is a kind of altar area, or spiritual location, ALTAR. And on most occasions, you would find this by the front door, and I think they have this in the room because this is a ryokan, and so this is part of the design of this personal space here. And they are a place where you can pause on your way in or on your way out, take a moment, look at the art, look at the floral arrangement. Generally, they're kept very simple, very clean. This is a fun idea also conceptually. I always had this idea that I would do this in my house. I haven't figured out how to make it work, partly because there's a radiator right by my front door. But creating a space of calm, even if you can't have a whole minimalist household, having a minimalist space, an altar to minimalism right by your front door, with a piece of art that gives you a moment of pause and moment of reflection. And typically in the tokonoma, they change the art seasonally. So it's also a neat idea in terms of like refreshing the space, keeping it also in line with the changing of temperature and light. So if you celebrate 4 seasons of the year, 4 times you're changing it. Some people, I am learning about the cross quarters, which is Celtic calendar, and so that's 8 times of change, each 8 seasonal changes. Over here, we see some of the storage. I think this is for clothes or luggage. This is a hotel space, very minimal, that you would have one more little area for clothing storage in a typical traditional setting. Otherwise, the space is occupied by a king-size bed on the floor. I am thinking about like putting my mattress back on the floor, largely because I miss this aesthetic of like this very simple interior. And then I was reminded of like my knees. So I'm not sure I'm actually going to do it, or if I'm going to put a little platform up under here. But notice how this is such a simple back headboard for the bed, big slab of, it looks like walnut. I don't know what wood it is. The walls are plaster or some kind of plaster-like material. I'm sure typically it was some kind of mud construction. I think we would probably find it comparable to wattle and daub or plaster and lathe, where there's a mixture of substances to make the wall nice and solid. It's neat how they did this 2 colors here so that it has a little bit of character in terms of color, that deep aubergine. One lamp here, and done. So super simple. Okay, before I get to the bathtub on the outside, we're going to just talk a little bit about this walkway. This walkway, which functions as a kind of hallway, is called the Engawa, and this is a feature that you often see around Japanese temples. Buddhist temples, I know for sure, not sure about the Shinto temples or shrines, but it functions as a hall, and you never have anything on it. It's always empty. And this is also a shoeless area. It's neat to think about halls and pathways where your feet are, where you're moving, as being completely empty of stuff. To me, that's a neat idea. I almost achieved that in my hall. right outside my door where I'm gesturing, but I don't quite. There's this one shelf of books that I can't seem to let go of. All right, so then this is the big old bathtub. So what is that? So this is outside the door. And what makes that possible is that this, as I mentioned before, this is a ryokan, but it's also an onsen. An onsen is it's like where you go for a hot bath, a bath. And hot springs are all over Japan, and bathing culture is still a big part of their traditional culture. So they offer that for tourists, they offer that for travelers, but they also practice it themselves. And in this particular onsen, which is a really nice one, this is going to be considered like luxury. You have your own, you're not sharing it with anyone. And they put it outside because typically these baths are extremely hot. So year-round hot bath out on the front, out on the porch. And I don't have a picture of what that garden looks like, but I suspect it looks pretty nice. What else can I say? There is one last thing I want to mention here. So it's interesting, even just using the word luxury. And I'll tell you what, like I had a different picture up, which maybe I'll link to it in the Substack post. And I was like, is that nice enough? Are they gonna think like, Eleanor, I guess he might like this. I don't know. It seems pretty, run down. So I got cold feet and I didn't post it. And then in that sort of self-consciousness, I Googled luxury ryokan Kyoto, which I know is a city, is known for its historic architecture, which is what I was trying to find. And then this came up like first hit. So I use the word luxury to find this. So they are catering to a Western audience. But luxury is not the aesthetic that they are going for in their mind here. What they're going for is much more about their own touchstones of beauty and what is a beautiful aesthetic. And for traditional Japanese aesthetic and arts is really based in ideas of the natural world as expressions of imperfection and as what's known as Wabi Sabi. And maybe you've heard the term Wabi Sabi. That's a tricky one to try to Google because there's a lot of Wabi Sabi sushi restaurants out there. But I do have a beautiful quote that you can read on the Substack. And it's mainly the thing I really like about it, and I'm just going to read some here, is how it talks about impermanence and then makes the connection to why that's beautiful. So Japanese art, I'm just going to read. Japanese art, infused with the spirit of Wabi Sabi, seeks beauty in the truths of the natural world, looking towards nature for its inspiration. It refrains from all forms of intellectual entanglements, self-regard, and affectation in order to discover the unadorned truth of nature. Since nature can be defined by its asymmetry and random imperfections, Wabi Sabi seeks the purity of natural imperfection. And I think that it really just sums it up. So, yeah, what do you think? Are you into Wabi Sabi already? Is this something you've looked into? Do you have a working definition or have you found one? Do you have a Wabi Sabi place in your home? Like, that's what I'm thinking. Like, maybe I can just manufacture a little Wabi Sabi right by my front door that I can look out on my way in and on my way out. And I think one of the key things here also is that, while you're staying, let's all imagine staying in this room here in this beautiful ryokan in Kyoto, we're having the experience of staying in there. So the whole thing, it's all very sensory. We're smelling the beautiful natural surroundings, all the wood, the freshness of the air on our skin, because it's got a lot of indoor outdoor. We have the straw tatami underfoot, the softness of the bed, the peaceful sounds of the hot bath being drawn. So the experience is not only visual, it's also visual, but it's also much more full-bodied. And so it has this quality of like a fullness, which is interesting if you think about it, because what we're looking at here is really minimal, but the priority is on a different experience. All right. I look forward to your comments, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye.